circle. We are each welcome in this place, whatever our age or stage, whatever our gender, our sexual orientation, our gender identity, whatever our race, our ethnicity, whatever and whoever we are, wherever we come from this night, we are each welcome in this place. We gather in this land, the home of the Papas Chase Nation for many generations. And as we gather here, we honor our partners in Treaty 6, the Cree nations who have made their home here, the Métis people who have made their way in this land for generations. We honor their culture, their traditions, their spirituality, and we commit ourselves again and again to walk a path of truth and reconciliation, to find our way home with one another. As we gather in this place, we gather in the spirit of this night, in the gift of this night, in the gift of this gentle light. We come from the world of cold, hard facts. We come from the world of competition and consumption. We come from the world of busyness and anxiety. We come from the world of bleak headlines and cruel realities. May we come to this time and place with our spirits open to the hope that might come to birth in us, to the love that might be known between us, and the peace that might be a light in our world.
We come to this Christmas Eve recognizing that we have not arrived here from nowhere, but on a journey that has brought us to this night. All our days have brought us to this day. And so it is that we light our Advent candles. We recognize in the candle of peace that we hope for that peace in each of our days, and that peace is a part of our Christmas. We light the candle of hope, recognizing that our hope burns brightly for a world as it could be, and that our hope is a part of this Christmas. We light this candle of joy, knowing that joy, even when hidden, is joy that is waiting to burst forth and to bubble forward, and that joy is a part of our Christmas. We light this candle of love with gratitude for the great loves of our life, for the love of life itself, and for the love that we have for this earth and for our world. And we know that love is a part of our Christmas. And tonight we come lighting a light that for us is lit on this night to symbolize the ways in which all of these symbols and emotions, this love, this hope, this peace, this joy, lives in us and is born anew within us. We light this candle to remind us that it is through us that these candles will burn and that our Christmas will begin.
We come with many hopes wonderings, worries. We come together to pray together, and I invite us to offer these words with one another. We come as travelers, ever seeking shelter and discovering the surprise of new life. We come newly born into each moment of our lives, regardless of age. We come with our hope that when we find ourselves in unexpected situations, we may find courage. Where anxiety threatens to overwhelm us, we may find serenity. Where challenges seem to close each door, may we cultivate imagination and encourage our perseverance. As this night is poised to become a new day, may we awaken to our deepest calling, to be dwelling places of light and light. May it be so.
We remember the Christmas story as it's told in the Gospel of Luke. The angel Gabriel came to a young woman named Mary in Nazareth. The angel told her that she was going to have a child, and Mary accepted this news courageously. "I am God's servant. Let it happen as you say. And now my heart praises God, and my soul is glad, for I have been remembered, though I am a lowly servant." Around that time, the emperor sent an order that everyone be counted in a census. So all went to their ancestral town to register. Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, the city of David, because they were descendants of King David. While they were there, the time came for Mary to have her baby, and she gave birth to a son. She wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. There were shepherds in the fields near Bethlehem taking care of their flocks that night. And an angel appeared to them, and they trembled in awe. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid, for I'm here with good news of great joy for all people. This very night, a child is born. God's anointed has come." Suddenly, a whole company of angels appeared to the shepherds, singing praises, singing glory to God in the highest, and on earth let there be peace and goodwill for all people. After the angels went away, the shepherds went quickly to Bethlehem, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in the manger. When they saw this, they told everyone what the angels had made known to them. And Mary pondered all these things in her heart. This is one of the first century stories that gives us this Christmas tradition. May we find wisdom for our living.
From another tradition, that tradition we know as Matthew, we have a second story that gives us this night. Joseph was engaged to a woman named Mary when he discovered she was expecting a child. As he considered his options, an angel came to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid to take Mary to be your wife. She will give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus, and he will deliver his people from oppression. When Joseph awoke, he committed himself to continue with his marriage plans. After they were married, Jesus was born in Bethlehem during the time that Herod was king. Sometime later, those who studied stars came from the east, and they asked at the palace, "Where is the baby that's born to be king? We've seen his star, and we have come to honor him." After consulting with his advisors, King Herod sent them to Bethlehem. Along the way, they saw the star again, and it went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was staying. When they went into the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They knelt before him and offered him the gifts they had brought, gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream of coming dangers, the Magi returned home by another way. This is one of the first century stories that gives us this Christmas tradition.
The Piece of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and I lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. This is the inspiration of an American poet. May we find this for our lips. On this Christmas Eve, it's always fascinating to hear both versions of the Christmas story. The one told by the community of Matthew and the one written down by the community of Luke. Two different streams of the Christian tradition, two different purposes, two different audiences, and something we don't often appreciate in the usual mashup of the Christmas tradition that we usually hear. That Christmas pageant tradition that mixes both of them together. In Luke's telling, we get a whole lot of certainty. We have Mary receiving the news of her baby with stoic acceptance and unwavering willingness. She sings a song about it immediately. The shepherds, upon hearing the news of this child, one who is anointed for greatness, they leave their fields without hesitation, and they go see this child for themselves. With a soundtrack playing of the angel multitudes in the background. There's certainty, there's single-mindedness, there's a sense of the inevitable unfolding of this story. But the story as it's told in Matthew, however, shares a different perspective and has a very different tone, I think. Matthew tells the first part of this story from Joseph's perspective. And rather than decisiveness, we hear of Joseph as the disappointed fiancé who's been confronted with terrible news. A child that isn't his. And his decision for a quiet separation. It tells of Joseph's dream as a sober second thought to that decision. And so we learn that he didn't want to cause a scandal for Mary. So now that he's had a night to sleep on this news, and with clarity of a new day, we see Joseph compelled toward compassion. toward relationship, toward acceptance, if only reluctantly at first. Matthew continues to tell us about the visit from the Magi, and this batch of characters is nowhere near as certain as the shepherds were. There's a star, there's a prophecy, there's something to investigate, but they can't have been sure what they were looking for or where they would find it. They were following the stars, perhaps one in particular. These are the travelers that you'd have to imagine needed to stop and ask for directions all the time, never certain of which way they were going. These star watchers would have had to have looked at the signs around them, stopped to discuss and consult what the skies were telling them, and then decide on the direction. They ask at palaces. They ask all the people who would know if a king had been born, and they're left with no better information than they had from the stars. Some questions, some possibilities to explore. More question marks. And then they finally stumble into Bethlehem, this tiny village, and it seems they find what they're looking for. In this telling, the Magi can sense, though, the danger in the air. These foreigners can recognize a tyrant king when they see one. And they saw one in Herod, and they know that once their gifts have been given to this child, they'd be wise to find their way out of that region post-haste. And by a path unknown by the palace, the governor, the emperor, their Roman occupiers. In this telling of the story, there's both wonder and danger. There's both reluctance and celebration. There's both fear and hope. And perhaps Matthew's story is appropriate for this night, for this late hour, for this season, when we can be preoccupied by so many things. Sometimes the schedule we keep at this time of year is part of our traditions. Visiting, baking, shopping, doing all these things that keep us quite busy. They're how we create the Christmas that we want. But sometimes this busyness is a distraction. A purposeful frenzy intended to leave little room for thinking and pondering, little time for what can be, for some of us, painful and difficult memories. An intentional busyness that doesn't leave time to think about, well, the state of our world, the state of our planet, so that we can carry on with our busyness and naively pretend about the joys to the worlds and the peace among all people. Matthew's story may have wisdom for us in a time of year when it's easy to contemplate what ifs and lament that we can't go back to loved ones we've lost, back to decisions we've made, back to when celebrating Christmas was easier. More like Luke, when everyone is just thrilled with the unfolding story, no questions asked. Like a beautiful Christmas card, everything perfect. It's a difficult reality, though, that Matthew opens our eyes to. I was pondering Matthew this week and thinking how it wasn't that many years ago perhaps our memories of the last century, or the end of it anyway, when we recognized that it wasn't that long ago that we believed collectively in the notion that society will gradually and surely progress, one step after another toward peace, toward cooperation, toward enlightenment, that for goodness sakes we can educate ourselves to a better world and a more secure existence, that we will grow as a culture on this steady incline toward peace and happiness and cooperation. I suspect, though, with the turn of this century and the recent years that we've all experienced, that cultural assumption is past. We'd like to believe that we live in a time very different from the first century when this story was first told. That very first Christmas with its poverty, its armed soldiers, where tyrants want babies dead. But the difficult reality that we face when we have our eyes open is that we come to this Christmas knowing that life is not a whole lot more secure than it was 2 millennia ago. Travel is still dangerous, as we recognize that bombs may be detonated in airports or train stations. When tyrant leaders still wreak havoc with their populations, occupying, killing their civilians with the use of their military. When millions of people can be displaced and forced to flee, to wander deserts, to make their homes in makeshift camps, in caves, in the mangers of overpacked villages, those days have not come to an end. And it's exactly at that moment of realization and that moment of eye-opening despair that where we need to pause and find, as my children would say, find your happy place. Like what Wendell Berry describes, when despair for the world grows, quote, I go and lie where the wood drake rests in the beauty on the water. I come into the peace of wild things, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world. Wherever that place is for us, it's for us to find it in the madness and mayhem of our world and our lives, so that we might first find the peace and rest that we need within us, finding a place in this world, a forest, a lake, a living room chair, a candle, a child, a friend, wherever that place is, and allowing it to give us respite and give us strength that we need to stand up again and begin the work of Christmas, the work of peacemaking, hope-carrying, love-bearing, joy-seeking. I wonder if some of the wisdom that Matthew's telling of this story gives us is in his perseverance. In Joseph's perseverance, in the way he reluctantly makes for himself and his family a place in the world. In the midst of travel, in the midst of being uprooted, told to make this journey at a time that's most inconvenient, on roads and paths populated with weary travelers and armed soldiers. he makes for himself and his family a place. Can't we glimpse in Joseph someone who recognizes that grief of lost expectations and changed dreams aren't something to get over, but rather something to companion as he journeys along? Can we not see in Joseph the ability to address his fears? The fears any new parents face. The fear of not knowing. The fear of bringing a baby into this harsh and difficult world. The fear of not knowing how to be a parent. Every parent knows that fear. I mean, for goodness sakes, on the way home from the hospital with our firstborn, this first-time dad locked his family out of his house. And then by the time our boy was 6 months old, I dumped him out of his stroller not once but twice, onto his face. But we survive these things. Any new parent knows that life doesn't come with instructions. Although there probably was instructions to buckle the seatbelt. In Joseph's story, we find inspiration. He didn't run away from an unexpected life, from embarrassment, from commitment, from not knowing what to do. He could have. He almost did. But instead, he was present to his fears. He acknowledged them, but found within him the strength and courage that helped him to stay, that helped him to take action rather than run, to live into the reality as it so suddenly presented it to him. There are always question marks. There's always wondering. There's always what ifs. In this story that we tell tonight, this story that never happened but is always happening, it reminds us that even in reluctance, there's an opportunity for revelry, for celebration. Amid all the questions, Joseph was able to celebrate with his wife and new child in that cave, in that stable, in that manger, in that barn, in that little piece of the earth. They grew their family. The Magi wandered, questioned. They managed to persevere, not pushing the questions away and covering them with mock certainty, but allowing the decisions of the past and the difficulties and hardships of the present to companion them. There's this carol that gets sung at this time of the year, to wonder as we wander. That's an important Christmas tradition. That on this Christmas night, in a world with just as many question marks as any Christmas, may we allow ourselves to wonder and wander. May we allow the wisdom of this celebration to encourage us to be, above all else, courageous. Courageous enough to embrace the unknowing, to embrace not knowing. May we accept our reluctance. May we welcome the question marks. And most of all, may we allow ourselves to revel, to celebrate, and to persevere in courage amidst it all. This is our one life. This is our one world. We can make of it what we can. Amid all the questions, amid all the challenges, it's our moving through this path of mystery with perseverance and courage that will be for us and for our world a light. It will be how we celebrate Christmas. With courage and perseverance, to revel despite being reluctant. May we welcome it with open arms, and may it be born in us tonight and always.
Each Christmas we hear the story of a family seeking shelter and not finding it in the place where one would expect to find it. Each Christmas we hear the story of there being no room for those in need of shelter. It has been our tradition for many years in this community to, during our Christmas Eve gatherings, to receive an offering for the projects sponsored by No Room in the Inn. This year, the project is for a safe place, a house in Sherwood Park that is there to provide shelter for abused women and children, those who have been victims of human trafficking, those who have been fleeing for safety, a safe place. And so in the next few moments, we have an opportunity to contribute to that campaign as we're able. There are envelopes on your seat, and we'd invite you to fill in both sides of the envelope so that you might receive a tax receipt for your contribution. If you wish to designate any part of your gift to Southminster-Steinhauer, there's an opportunity to do that by checking the boxes on the back. This is our opportunity to receive the gift of music and to give what we can to No Room in the Inn. In the best wisdom teaching, in that of the Buddha, he told us to go make of ourselves a light. In the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, we learned we are light for the world. In every great religious tradition, light is a symbol of our quest, a symbol that we come from light, we return to light, we seek to live in light. And so as a way of sharing that light with one another, we will pass the light until we have lit this room with our candlelight. May the light we hold in our hands remind us that we are a light for the world, a light of compassion, a light of courage, a light of comfort. We invite you to tip your unlit candle into the lit candle of your neighbor, and to keep our lit candles upright as we sing Silent Night.
Not one light, but many guide us on our way tonight.
Every flame of hope, every flame of love and forgiveness and peace.
Every effort to do good.
Every act of kindness, mercy, and justice.
Every breath
offers our burning light to the world.
And so may we go into this night with the radiance of love shining in each of us.
Born to shine as the light of 1,000 Christmas stars. May we go in the strength of light, the strength of our love and our compassion, our hope and our grace, for a world that desperately needs the light of our love. We go and we go together.